Good morning. As I have promised, I am pre-recording the second part of our discussion. After we've looked at the complete research process from conceptualization to conclusion, from womb to tomb, uh, from ejaculation to resurrection, we now take a complete turn and try to review the entire research process all over again. And it's very important that you are aware of some of the things I will emphasize only because these are, if you will, very important aspects of the research process. Since none of you can interfere with my notes, I'm going back to the new version of the Blackboard. It gives me more liberty and more creativity, if you will. So let's begin with the background of the study. And take note again, the background of the study should create the need for the study. And the background of the study does not only create the need for the study, it should actually push forward, cite basis why your study is important. So in a way, it's while there is a specific section for the significance of the study, the background of the study should emphasize your evidences, the rationale or rationally why you are actually conducting this study. So for example, why am I studying this capability, or why am I studying this section? I have to lay down my evidences, and my evidences can come from reports, from accounts. And these accounts and reports can be personal accounts or personal narratives at that, that you have to pay attention to. Secondly, this background of the study should naturally flow. And this is something I forgot to comment on last time, because I've always spoken about the sections. But remember, one section should naturally flow to another. And in this case, the background of the study should naturally flow to the statement of the problem. You do not actually separate the background of the study to the statement of the problem to such an extent that, because the statement of the problem is divisible into two parts, right? The statement of the problem, for example, we can look at it in terms of the general statement of the problem. But also, on the other hand, we can look at it in terms of the specific statements of the problem. So two dimensions. Wait, let's change that instead. Two dimensions. One will speak about the general statement of the problem, and the other will speak about the specific statements. And we did already clarify the relationship between the two. The general statement is the whole. The specific statements are the parts. No, and that's the relationship of the whole and the parts, such that the general statement of the problem is something that cannot be answered at your disposal, that cannot be clarified at your disposal, and that's why we always say it is the whole, and the other one is actually the parts. No, this is the nice thing about the new uh, notes Blackboard. So a relationship of the whole and parts, and that's the test there. You only have to look, are the specific statements of the problem that I am proposing indicative of the whole, and constitutes the parts that I want to work on. No, so it's a relationship of the whole and the parts. Now, of course, we did say that the general statement of the problem, or the statement of the problem for that matter, which I am now putting under inside the box, basically defines the outline of the entire study. It will define how your background of the study will look like. It will define, how your RRL will look like. It will define how your chapter 4 will look like. It will define how your conclusion, summary, and recommendations will look like. It will define everything. That is the organizational principle, not how you gather data, not the type of literatures that are involved in the process, no, but the RRL, the statement of the problem. Okay. Now, of course, another thing that we did is that we in fact emphasize to you that in the commandant's paper, the outline of the commandant's paper should be a describe outline, an evaluate outline, and a prescribe outline. And these three are very important also because describe, evaluate, and prescribe are the three movements that I am suggesting for purposes of this study. Remember, there are many types of theses, there are many types of researches, but a describe, evaluate, and prescribe sets of questioning is actually one that that allows you to look into specific concepts, but not only one that allows you to review specific concepts. It's also one that allows you to evaluate the specific concepts and also suggest interventions or recommendations, which are very important in the research that is conducted in the armed forces. But describe, evaluate, and prescribe have many uses, you'd see, as all researchers operate on these template, as I've demonstrated to you, but also as we will see again as we move forward. Okay. Now, this describe, evaluate, prescribe has a one-to-one correlation with the objectives of the study. And as I said, the objectives of your study will follow also a similar movement, one that identifies the status, if that's the describe, one that enumerates gaps, or one that evaluates, identify differences, factors affecting, identifies relationships, for example, and one that suggests interventions, which are all, as you've seen, movements of the thesis, of the work that that we have demonstrated to you just now. Okay, so do not forget that the objectives of the study, the objectives of the research should actually follow not the general statement of the problem, but in fact should follow the specific statements of the problem, the parts from which this will constitute the whole. No, you do not actually provide objectives to the general statement of the problem, because the general statement of the problem is supposedly not accessible at this point. But what is accessible are the parts, such that answering problem number 1 necessarily leads you to the data needed to answer problem number 2. And answering problem number 2 is needed in order for you to answer problem number 3. So that direction, that relationship is also very important. Now, we did say that also, and it's worthy of consideration, that that in the advent that that you implement a correlation, there will be 2 described stages there, because you have to lay down the concept 1. You have to lay down concept 2 before you do evaluate and prescribe. In that case, therefore, You will have a second identify here also, only because there has to be a one-to-one correlation with the SOP. And the one-to-one, you'd see that alignment in the macro structure will play a very important role in your understanding of the entire research process as you move forward. Okay? So that's the first alignment that you see there in the first box. This is the second alignment you'd see, which is still related to the statement of the problem, but is still something that we reflect on and pay attention to. Now, in relation to the conceptualization phase, you are familiar that we construct this phase vis-a-vis or side by side with the RRL, no? Chapter 2. And here in the RRL, we said that we have to describe first and describe concept, and not only describe the concept, we have to identify the dimensions of the concept, no? So we do not only identify the concept, we try to also clarify what the dimensions of the concept are. And in this case, I will just identify two, but you see, I'm never really fan of twos as I am of threes, no? Why is it important to put everything on trees, like triangulation in social science research or qualitative research? That's because you'd see that they're very stable, like triangles are very stable, right? So in the described part, the outline will look like that. And when we look at the evaluation of concept, please do not commit the mistake of many researchers, neophyte researchers, where they go back to the concept. No, you evaluate the concept, yes, but actually you organize it according to dimensions. So this is actually it's so evaluate concept, and then we look at dimension A. And dimension A here has to be divided with at least 2, because identifying gaps, weaknesses, challenges, for example, are difficult to do. That's the reason why I only identified 2, because that's the minimum requirement, really. But for dimensions, with the actual dimension, I suggest you get 3. Okay? I hope you are listening to what I'm saying, especially for those who just identified 2 dimensions in their papers. But in terms of evaluate, yes, I understand. Now, evaluate here, I just put evaluate, but you know already that whether you implement a causal comparative, that evaluate section will turn into factors affecting. The moderating variables are factors that affect the concept. And if it's a correlation, this is the question of relationships. But of course, we will subscribe to the second 2 described concepts. So describe concept A, describe concept B before you evaluate when you are relating two concepts together. No, but more important, of course, is the prescribed. Remember, even if we say prescribed concept here, or prescribed in relation to concept, we do not actually approach the concept directly. We approach the we do not approach the concept directly. We approach the dimensions, because we cannot approach the concepts directly. No, it's a huge cake. You cannot put it in your mouth. So it has to follow these very concrete movements or dimensions. Okay, so this is as you now see, even your even your RRL will follow the outline of your statement of the problem. But do not forget also the fact that this RRL that we've shown to you, this is actually largely a priori, no? Largely a priori. That's why many people don't actually like these because they are anticipatory of what is to come. But remember, you do not have the luxury of time when you do the research, and therefore this you need to identify the concepts that you are taking into consideration in order for you to recognize why these are important, no? Why these are important. Now these every aspect that you have here, let me just everything that you put here in the RRL, that is actually what will the check here, as you know, is your conceptual framework. No, the conceptual framework, as we said, is the schematic diagram. It's the mind map of all the concepts that are used in your paper. No, this is the mind map of all everything that you are using in your paper. And for that matter, this will represent the figure to show how problem number 1 is related to problem number 2, or problem number 2 is related to problem number 3. That's why some will think that this is not necessary, but in reality, these are all necessary concepts to work on. No? And the necessity of these concepts tells you how they are related in the schematic diagram. And I did say that in the schematic diagram, you can be as creative as possible as long as you can demonstrate the relationship between the aspects. But of course, there's a no-no there. You are not supposed to put something in the conceptual framework that was not discussed in the RRL. Sometimes you'd realize some students will put a very broad, very complicated, very exhaustive conceptual framework, but none of the concepts were used or discussed in the RRL. No. The conceptual framework is nothing but a conceptual is nothing but a schematic representation of the RRL. That's how they are related to each other. Now, in the commandant's paper of the PAFOS, of course, there's an additional dimension to this one. And one that comes in only at this point. And there are two things that are worthy of consideration. What are those two things which comes also from the RRL? One is the hypothesis, and we did say in the hypothesis that you have to be careful about the construction of the hypothesis, because if you say, for example, that when you look at the status, the hypothesis should be directional. We did emphasize that in class. So it should not be a null hypothesis. It should not be a null hypothesis, and it should be directional. And when we say directional hypothesis, please take note that that it has to be active. It has to be a direct answer to the statement of the problem. In this case, therefore, for it to sound intelligent, there are also movements to pay attention to there. And what are the movements that you have to pay attention there? One, you have in the describe part, it has to be low, and that's the only instance that the evaluate part is possible. If the first part is high, then there's no need to identify gaps, challenges, because it's high, no? And then because it is low, then you can prescribe. This is the only instance your hypothesis will make sense. I'm telling you already as early as now. If your hypothesis doesn't follow that, that movement of low, there are gaps, or that you can prescribe. If you say they're high, then everything else become null hypothesis, which is a no-no, as I told you already. Aside from the null hypothesis, of course, we're looking at assumptions. I never really expanded assumptions technically, but assumptions are the things that you presuppose. That's what it means. That means I am not going to prove that this is the case. I am assuming it. That's what it means. I am presuming it. So these are actually your presumptions. These are the things that you do not want you don't want to waste your time trying to prove. You just accept it as a fact. That's the assumptions of the study. So also, please take note that in terms of objectives, hypotheses, and assumptions, you always implement a one-to-one correspondence, no? So you ask yourself, what are the things you assume for problem number 1? Or what are the things that you assume in problem number 2? Or what is my hypothesis in answering problem number 1? Or what are my hypothesis in answering problem number 2? No, like that. Another thing that is worthy of consideration at this point, as you answer your hypothesis, is the need to define terms. And here you will see the definition of terms. Please, again, as I said, when we speak about definitions in research, this is not dictionary definitions, or not common definitions. Instead, these definitions are always operational, which basically means as you use it in the study. No? Always as you use it in the study. And because that is always how you move it, you need to be able to say, this is how I understand it. Of course, this operational definition flows largely also from the RRL. Where else will it come from, right? The RRL. And as you know, in the scientific world, we never use the words that we use univocally, as if there's just one definition. In fact, depending on the thinker, depending on the concept, things will change. As I mentioned last time, gravity for Newton gravity for Newton is not the same gravity as that for Einstein. No, just a minute, please. Let me just close this door because the mosquitoes are all coming in already, and it's early in the morning, and they're all taking advantage of my fresh blood. Wow, fresh. Mm. So that being the case, no, this is how your chapter 2 will look like. Now, of course, as you read chapter 2, as you consider your a priori concepts here, it will lead you to another paradigm, to another perspective. And this is the perspective of chapter 4, no? Yes, that this will lead you to chapter 4, no, almost immediately. Sorry, OC teacher. I wanted to balance the... Ayaw niya. Never mind. And chapter 3, sorry, is the research methodology, or this is the section on the research methodology. Now, as I said, when we're talking about research methodology, there are already two things to pay attention to in terms of research methodology. And what are the things that we have to pay attention to in terms of research methodology? On the one hand, there are two research methodological techniques, quantitative and qualitative researches. And each of these researches will bring about a very unique research tradition that you have to pay attention to. And as I said last time, for quantitative research, for example, in terms of ayaw niya. In terms of quantitative research, we can identify the experimental model and remember, the experimental model will speak about the control and experimental setups, which are actually classes, if you will, classes. There is the causal comparative model, and the causal comparative model will talk about independent variable, dependent variable, moderating variable for that matter, the correlation, and therefore will emphasize differences. Here, this will emphasize effectiveness. So we never, as I said, and I don't know if you heard it, we never use the word effectivity, effectiveness in non-experimental models. The only way we can assert effectiveness is through experimentation, no? And then the correlational research. In terms of correlational research, we're looking at relationships or associations that whether they're associated. And then we have your famous survey method. And as I said, when you do your survey, you have to provide questions to all the statements of the problem. For causal comparative and for correlations, you only provide a questionnaire for problem statement number 1, concepts and its dimensions. The causal comparative, the demographic variables will be the one that will take its role in causal comparative. In correlations, you have to do that to both of the concepts, but the correlations is something you can do on your own. But with survey, no, which many of you will implement, I'm sure, please make sure you have an answer to problem statement number 1. Survey data for problem statement number 2. Survey data for problem statement number 3. That's how to do it. Okay. Now for qualitative research, we did also explain that to you last time, that there are many types of qualitative research. Each of these types are actually rooted on a social scientific tradition, no? That's why we have grounded theory. We have phenomenological research. We have ethnographic research. We have historical research. These are also phenomenological traditions. But as I said, if it's very difficult to pin down specifically what type of research is involved, and you're not sure anymore what is the type of research that is involved, whether it's quanti, quali, or even mixed, you can go to the more generic way of describing this research is descriptive evaluative type of research, because this is really descriptive and evaluative, or it's an action research because you are responding to a specific to a very specific problem that you recognize in the research process, no? Now, of course, the type of research process that you implement will bring about also changes in how you process sampling, no? The locale of the study, that simply tells you the place of the study, nothing more. But sampling will be very unique, and the uniqueness of sampling is rooted on the fact that we do not implement sampling in the same way for quali and for quanti. Remember, in quantitative research, the sampling design is random, and therefore there's a need for a sample size. And when you say random, that simply means equal opportunity. Everybody was given the equal opportunity to be chosen. That's what random technically means. Now, here it's non-random in qualitative research. And as I said last time, this operates always in terms of whether you're specially selected, specially, or conveniently chosen. So sometimes we choose people only in terms of convenience, and then and remember, there's no need for a sample size at this point. No, there's no need for a sample size. And why do you not need a sample size? Because you don't. There's no attempt at generalization. That too. No. Here, there's a need for sample size because this is going to be a question of generalization. Can I generalize my findings to the entire population? Here, there's no generalization of sorts, because here the goal is more descriptive rather than generalizing. In fact, others will even say in quantitative research, we try to generalize the picture, whereas in qualitative research, we do our best to produce the nuances, the differences in response. Okay? Now, aside from the random sampling that is involved here in the process, so take note again, no? I was reminded of it. If your question, if your research question is answerable by chapter 2 or chapter 3, they're not research questions. It's research questions are supposed to be answerable in chapter 4. So for example, to even ask what is the demographic profile, that is a chapter 3 question. Or to even ask what are the programs or what are the policies, those are chapter 2 questions also. So be careful because it's easy to presuppose that because you're answering the question after the statement of the problem, they already constitute the research questions. No, some are RRL questions, others are methodological questions, and you need to ask yourself, no, am I asking an RRL question or am I asking a methodological question? Because this is also where a lot of problems come about in the study. Now, another thing we need to look at is instrumentation. And when we start talking about instrument, ano ba yan? Halatang alas 3 pa lang ng umaga. And when we're looking at instrumentation, again, the process for the construction is the same, no? Yes, you've heard me right. Questionnaires and interview guide questions are constructed in the same way. And how are they constructed? We go back again to the concepts, dimensions, and in this case, indicators. There, the indicators. Of course, indicators is more like reference to quantitative methodologies, but something to pay attention to, because where will the indicators come from? Well, obviously, they come from the RRL. That's where it comes from, the RRL. It's the RRL that allows you to identify the indicators. But then, of course, we also need to create the distinction. We also need to create the distinction between the type of indicators or type of data or type of things that will come from a qualitative review and the type of things that will come from a quantitative review. No, we have to create the distinction between the two. even if we did say that all of this comes from the indicators, no? So first things first, in terms of quantitative reviews, quantitative questionnaires, we said these are in simple statements. It should be in simple statements. So simple are these questionnaires that they are concrete, they are practical, they are experientiable, and they are doable. Those are the things that you need to pay attention to, no? Oh, now, and they are in statement form, no? You do not do anything else but express it. The perfect examples for quantitative research are teacher faculty evaluations, actually. Because faculty evaluations is the mastery of questionnaires. But also, please do not forget, I did tell you, always ask even items, even options. Never odd options, no? Never. And when I say even options, you always ask in a Likert type scale. Always ask 1, 2, 3, 4. Never add options, never provide 3, because as I said last time also, people will choose the 3 if they're lazy. That's why even in the examples that I showed to you, there are even negatively stated items as a check that they were reading the questionnaire, that they are reading the questionnaire. So on the other hand, for qualitative research, these are in questions, simple questions. Again, simple questions again, no? Simple questions. Again, they should be concrete, practical, experientiable. Never on the level of dimensions. Never ask on the level of concepts or dimensions, no? That's a mortal sin, no? Because they did not do the RRL, they did not do the conceptualization. You did the conceptualization, and therefore you always ask at that level, never at the level of the never at the level of the never at the level of the concept, never on the level of the dimensions. You always go down to that level of specificity, no? Dapat ganun ka detailed yang degree na yan, no? You always ask on that level of specificity. That's also very important to consider. Okay? So, now let's look at data analysis, because in the data analysis, that is where we will have to implement already a lot of things, but the outline that determines it is still your describe, evaluate, prescribe, your statement of the problem. And here in the quantitative research, we did say that this is a question of mean, median, mode, well, measures of central tendency. And not just measures of central tendency. Please take note that the preset criteria must be created to interpret the mean. So for example, you wanted to answer level of readiness, you have to have a preset criteria to interpret level of readiness, no? For qualitative techniques, and you have to understand the describe is not on the level, describe on the level of dimensions, not concepts. That's the reason why I've always told you, never ask, never never provide an answer to the answer always per dimension, always on the level of dimensions, never on the level of concept, as if the level of concept will suffice. No, don't do that. Always ask on the level of the dimensions. Always ask on the level of details. Always ask on the level of the specific or specificity. Those are very important things to consider. Okay? Next. For qualitative research, you need to be able to, so here, sorry, I almost forgot. Even the presentation will change, no? But later we'll see that in chapter 4. Because here you begin first with that. Even the presentation you'd see, you begin with the measures of central tendency. In qualitative research, you begin with chunks, clusters, themes. But also do not forget there is a rubric for interpretation. No? So do not tell me, sir, I'm working on qualitative research. I don't need a preset criteria. I only need a rubric. Yes, to a certain extent, that's true. But also to a certain extent, that's not true. No, you have to have a rubric. So even when the question is a described question and you're doing qualitative research and you wanted status of like these, or you wanted to what extent, you can answer that in qualitative research, not just in quantitative research. But when you answer that in qualitative research, you need to provide a rubric for evaluating the aspects of the dimensions so that you can identify the level of the levels. And in class, of course, I suggested the one-way, one-point rubric, which simply defines the standard and also if there's lacking or it's way below. Okay. Now, in terms of the evaluate part, again, the evaluate part, you evaluate the concepts again. In quantitative research, we did say the evaluate part is divided into differences and associations. And on discussing about differences, the assumption is parametric first before non-parametric. For two items, this is where you actually implement your t-test. Okay? T-test for independent samples. If it's more than 3, that's where you implement your ANOVA. But remember, in talking about ANOVA, when it becomes significant at 0.05 and 0.010, there's a post-hoc analysis that has to be conducted. This will show you where specifically was there a difference in the study. Now, of course, those are parametric. If it's non-parametric, let me put it here in close and open parentheses already. This is going to go to those who that has names, no? So this is the Mann-Whitney U test. And in terms of ANOVA, this is going to be the Kruskal-Wallis ANOVA. Okay? Those are for tests of differences. Now, when we look at also quantitative research, we are also looking at associations or relationships, as we said a while ago. And in looking at relationships, again, this is going to be a difference between whether the data is categorical or metric. And if it's categorical, we recourse almost immediately to chi-square. This is Spearman-Rop, marami pang pwede, pero the more comfortable, the more often that I see is actually chi-square. And then if it's a metric measure, we actually move to the Pearson product moment correlation. Those are very important aspects to take into consideration. Okay? So associations. But if you're just interested with weaknesses and gaps, gaps, challenges, again, no, if these are just survey questions, this is going to simply take the form of the mean, no? Measure of central tendency, mean, median, mode, but more often than not the mean, no? Even if we say measures of central tendency here, remember the standard is always the mean score. So, and then we look at qualitative research. And in terms of qualitative research, you chunk it again, as you've seen yesterday in the other lectures. Yesterday, clusters, and then themes. And then those are the basis for defining the areas for evaluation. And for the prescribed section, please take note that the prescribed question for quantitative research, this is a consequence of statistical research. Well, actually, only consequence of significant items. We only comment if the item is significant at 0.05 or 0.10. If it's not 0.05 or 0.10, we don't actually provide interventions or prescriptions already. Or we provide prescriptions to identified gaps, weaknesses, challenges, etc. Again, please take note, if you identify two different gaps and weaknesses that just duplicated all your dimensions or treatment of your dimensions in the evaluate part, or so what if that's what you do, you have to go back to here, because here the evaluate concept, this is only for challenges in concept. So if you have a gaps and challenges, you have a gap in concept, dimension A, B, C, and then challenges in concept A, B, C again. No, do not forget that. Some people will try to shortcut that process, but you cannot shortcut that process. In terms of qualitative research, of course, again, well, it's true of the prescribed. No, in fact, the prescribed should provide a one-to-one correlation to the evaluate section. So in qualitative research, you provide intervention to each of the identified, remember, of the identified gaps, challenges, weaknesses, or etc. Each, to each. I hope I emphasize that more than enough. So that is how this section on the data analysis will look like. Actually, there are a lot of things that are going on here. But what I want you to emphasize, to see at this point, hindi ko makuha yung linyang straight. What I want you to see at this, as early as these in your paper, is that as early as your writing of chapter 3, you should already know how to gather your data, how to answer your SOP. Because if you yourself do not know how to answer your SOP, that's a huge problem. That's a very, very huge problem, if you will. So dapat as early as this one, familiar na kayo. Now, it is here at this point, sorry. So at this point, you will see the inclusion of another framework, and that's the research framework. The research framework is different from the conceptual framework because the research framework schematically identifies how the research will be conducted. See how that's different? In the conceptual framework, the concern is actually diagramming the variables, the concepts, the dimensions that are used in the study. The research framework basically clarifies how the research is going to be conducted. That's the reason why in some institution, this is where we use the input, process, output, outcome model. We don't use that in the conceptual framework because it already preempts why don't use that? It's it's very linear. I told you to be very creative. But more importantly, the IPOO is actually a research framework. It tells you how to conduct the study, how the study should move forward. And that's the reason why it already talks about processes and outcomes to processes, or even output to processes and outcomes as a consequence. This is something you have to pay attention to. In fact, the outcome, specifically the outcome, the letter letter O, the first letter O, the outcome is a anticipation of your chapter 4, no? Because remember, in chapter 4, this is already your presentation and analysis, a presentation and analysis. Of course, in the discussion that I did in class, I didn't simply talk about this one as presentation and analysis. It meant more than presentation and analysis. And we will look at that more clearly as we move forward. Okay? But I did say in class, sorry, that the RRL is going to be the mirror image of your chapter 4. And I did say a while ago that this is generic, this is a priori, a priori. But I also need to say that this is generic. The RRL is a generic expression. When you enter your presentation and analysis section here in chapter 4, this is already going to be branded, no? Branded. So take note, this is not just going to be a priori. This is going to be branded. And this will be a combination of a priori concepts, with the things that came from the RRL, and a posteriori, or a priori as we call it, or in vivo, or in vitro, as I said in class. In fact, I'd rather call it in vitro to reinsert rather than in vivo. But anyway, that's what we always use in research. Okay? Now, so we're now in chapter 4, no? Chapter 4 is your contribution. Obvious ba? All caps yan. This is your contribution to the work, no? Contribution to the work. And because this is your contribution to the work, you need to understand that it needs to it needs to present the findings of the study. That's what it does. The findings of the study is really a manifestation of what you were able to discover as a consequence of really trying to go to the level of the population local. I did also say in one of the classes that this is like a bow tie, right? Chapters 1 to 3 is from the bigger world. You go to the specific, to the level of the detail. And then the huge lacuna between data gathering and the processing of data is where you enlarge it again until the conclusion, where you actually end the paper precisely where you started it, on the level of the general concept, right? Which we will see in a bit. But this is your contribution. Now, again, no, there are you need to understand that the determining outline is the SOP, no? Akala ng cellphone ko tulog pa ako. Kanina pa po ako gising. Well, let me just awaken my cell phone so that it stops alarming every so often. So here you'd see, and you have to pay attention, because here seldom do we actually provide already, seldom do we provide guidance at this level, kasi paminsan wala na kami dito sa level na to. But do not, you have to understand the organizing principle is still the statement of the problem. That has not changed. This has been the organizing principle for your data analysis, is the same organizing principle for your RRL, is the same organizing principle for many, no, your objectives, hypotheses, assumption. It's the SOP that organizes the way things will be answered. And remember, it's the SOP that actually is what we're trying to answer. The success of the research depends on whether you were able to answer your statement of the problem or not. But how we answer the statement of the problem will vary depending on, again, whether we take a qualitative approach or whether we take a quantitative approach. Now, I'm just saying these, but I'm just saying that it will vary, but I'm not saying they shouldn't be the organizing principle, these are two different things altogether. So when we say quantitative data, even in quantitative data, you need to understand that we present data deductively here. And when we say deductively here, this is where you present the general first before you do the particular. That's how we present data in quantitative research. That's the reason why we begin with the table and we dissect the table. That's how it's done in quantitative research, right? So there are levels to data analysis. So in the presentation of the data, so my thoughts jump, sorry. So we present the data, we analyze the data, and we interpret the data. Those are the three movements that you are going to implement. But do not forget that we said it still follows the statement of the problem. So this will still follow the describe, evaluate, and prescribe notion, which we've already seen in the in problem number in the RRL, no? As I said, the RRL and the chapter 4 are mirror images of each other. mirror, but the difference is the other one is branded, the other one isn't. No, the other one is already when you apply the concepts to your population and local. But we're still looking at the presentation of data, so the rest I will separate because analysis and interpretation can follow differently. But in presenting data first, the other one will follow a deductive model. That's how you present the data. I might as well just remove analysis and interpretation for the meantime, just for purposes of this presentation. And then on the other hand, when we're looking at qualitative research, remember qualitative research is inductive. And when we say inductively, we are actually beginning with the particular to the general, no? That's the reason why you have to begin with citing your interview scripts. We need to look at how things are. You have to cite data sources, no? Your triangulation you have to cite before they're thematized, no? Before a table is generated, where you articulate the themes, because the themes here is a consequence of the chunking, clustering, and the like. Okay. Now, I forgot of something which is very important in the instrumentation, on the level of instrumentation. Please take note that here, in terms of simple statements and things like that, the questionnaire must be pre-tested, and it has to be pre-tested for validity and reliability. Please do not forget that. Whereas here on the level of the qualitative research, there's no such thing as pre-testing, but there has to be triangulation, which basically means comparable and data. That data is comparable from multiple sources. That when you try that there cannot be a single source of data, else it will look like opinion, right? But we do not question perceptions in qualitative research, but we triangulate data to a certain objectivity, although objectivity is never an issue in qualitative research in the first place. Sorry. Daming alarm. I was making sure I will wake up. But because I was so not sure I will wake up, I was like, I never fell asleep technically. But never mind. So do not forget that in the presentation of the data, when you present the data, you present the data in a way that that is like this, okay? There. That's the presentation of the data. Now, the presentation of the data, remember, must be inductive, general to particular, citing data sources and themes. But please take note that in qualitative research, the presentation of data necessitates triangulation. Now, the error of many students is they use triangulation as an organizing principle for their data. So, example, they present KII, key informant interview, focus group discussion, and document analysis as a mode of presenting their data. Yes, that's possible, but do not forget that the one that determines the presentation of data is the statement of the problem. Under the statement of the problem, then you can do KII, FGD, document analysis. That's only the instance that can be done. But if you'd ask me, from the very beginning, triangulate already. So operate thematically, identify the themes based on 3 data sources, and then when you present the themes, show the corroboration. That's how I will suggest. Okay? Now, after you present the data, of course, we move now to data analysis. And data analysis technically necessitates corroboration. Data analysis necessitates explanation. So you cannot simply say that this is slow, period. That's because that's the interpret. No, you, to a certain extent, you need to be able to explain why it was slow. No, it being low cannot stand on its own. No, you need to be able to explain instances why it's low. You have to be able to provide evidences, no, to the findings, no. Remember, at the end of the day, research is a question of evidences. Are the evidences sufficient? And then after you have done that analysis, we go now to interpretation of data. And again, here in the interpretation of data, we go back again to the RRL. No, we go back to research. We go back to implications. What are the implications of this study? What are the things that we can get based on the findings? Remember the heart, and I will reiterate that over and over and over again. The heart of the research process is your chapter 4. This is the longest chapter. So that if I look at it along this line, the longest chapter is chapter 4, seconded by your chapter 2. Third is your conceptualization, statement of the problem, background of the study. Fourth is your research methodology, and last is your summary, conclusion, and recommendations. That's actually the way to move forward. Remember the organizing principle here again, and I will reiterate so that you will never forget it, because if you do, I don't know what to do anymore, is the statement of the problem. In chapter 4, you answer the statement of the problem. Okay? So and provide data there. Now, in the analysis section, please take note that it's also worth remembering that in the analysis section, we do implement a thematic analysis. And why is there a need to emphasize the thematic analysis? Because this has been the organizing principle of the paper from the very beginning. We've been thematizing it, following the statement of the problem. So we stick to it. Okay? That is also how the entire paper will be evaluated. That's also how the entire paper will be presented. Okay? Next. The shortest chapter is your last chapter, because here you only have a summary, and in the summary, you always provide the salient findings. In fact, the summary is the direct answer to the statement of the problem, or simply an articulation of the salient findings. No, again, here you see me emphasize the one-to-one correlation. Answer the problem, statement of the problem. Diba? I always tell you, if you're rushing, you only read the introduction, because in the introduction, they raise the problem of a book, and then in the conclusion, they answer it. It's a very basic organizational principle that we forget often. And then for the conclusion is actually where we put our generalization. But we know, and I'm very much aware that we don't have generalizations in the our qualitative research. But nevertheless, there's still a need to remember it's a bow tie, no? Chapters 1, 2, 3, we go to the level of detail. 4 and 5 from the detail, we go back to the same level. So that's the reason why we go back again to the level of the general concept in the conclusion. And then in the recommendation, please take note that the recommendation must be doable. That's the most important characteristic there, doable. Doable interventions to the identified topics, no? To the identified gaps. Now you'd say there are some sections for PAFOS, for the Air Force, for example, you have a chapter 6. The chapter 6 will come from one of your prescribed item, no? From one of the prescribed item, this is where your chapter 6 will come from. This is from one of the items you prescribe. You will enlarge that and turn it into an actual project, you know, so that there is a direct response to the identified problem. But remember, in the research process, for those who don't have a chapter 6, in the research process ends with the recommendation. But because it ends with summary, conclusion, and recommendation, it's also worth noting that no new data is actually presented at this level. No new data is actually presented here. Everything that is in the summary, conclusion, and recommendation should have come, or is a consequence, if you will, of what has already been said in chapter 4. Chapter 5 then closes the door. No? And I hope I emphasize that more than enough. Chapter 5 closes the door of the paper. I did say that in the recommendations, you have to do the recommendation one by one also, di ba? I did say that in the discussion on the recommendation. So, yes, recommendation for problem number 1, recommendation for problem number 2, recommendation for problem number 3. But I did say also that only in the while there is a very strong implementation of a one-to-one correspondence. And remember, if there's an A here, B here, C here, there has to be here also. Kasi this is following the statement of the problem, right? So that's the reason why if there's an A, if I'm not mistaken, there's an I, and onwards. But this is the only instance it will have a number 4. And this is the recommendation for further research. You need to help other researchers who are looking for a topic. What in your topic you know is important but was not able to do, or you stumble on to be important but was not able to consider, no? So do not forget that also. So again, take note that in the summary, conclusion, and recommendation, there has to be a one-to-one correlation. And the one-to-one correlation is based on the statement of the problem. The statement of the problem is the one that defines how you are going to organize your, the statement of the problem is the one that is going to organize your summary. It's the one that will organize your conclusion. It's the one that will organize your recommendations. And again, take note for those who have a action plan and project, or those who have chapter 6, the chapter 6 can come from the identified recommendations here. As long as this is a consequence of your research, yes, it can come from there also. But more importantly, please take note that your projects or your interventions that you will actualize is actually coming from the findings of the study in chapter 4. So this is a consequence, a project, sorry. This is a project that is a consequence of the research. And as such, it's something that you have to pay attention to also, no? That this project came from data. That's why this is evidence-based interventions. But for PAFOS, for example, here you will be forced to use your strategic management skills, which Dr. Ed will discuss to you, and models. And this is where the next module will be important for you. But the more important thing for me is that this project is not separate from the research process. Instead, this research chapter 6 is a consequence of the entire research process. So we've looked at the background of the study. We looked at the general and the specific questions. We've looked at how the specific and general questions are related to the objectives, have a one-to-one correlation with the hypothesis and the assumption, but is also defining how the RRL will look like, and how the RRL and the conceptual framework are actually reducible to each other. We've looked at also research methodology and tried to operate on the quantitative and qualitative world. Of course, there's a mixed method. And in the mixed method, you combine both quanti and quali. Do not forget that. The rigors of quanti and the rigors of quali will have to be implemented in a mixed method. No, we've looked at sampling. This is sampling. Do not forget why that is also very important. And in terms of sampling, we've looked at instrumentation. And here we show to you indicators, the alignment with indicators. We've looked at your data. We've looked at data analysis, and we've looked at the research framework. We've also looked at chapter 4, presentation and analysis of data, and created the distinction between quantitative and qualitative research in terms of the presentation of data, the analysis of data, and the interpretation of data. And we've looked at the summary, conclusion, and recommendations, and also considered the action plan and project that is demanded of some of PAFOS. And that is your research methodology discussion for the past 4 days, dear officers of the Philippine Air Force. So from here, it's I've been talking for almost 1 hour 30 minutes. It's only 4:30 a.m. in my watch. But from here, I think we can go. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to send the questions. I'll try to respond to them later on. And this afternoon, when I meet you again, I will start looking at editing and also some rules of grammar, which is very important also in the writing process. Thank you very much for your attention. Have a good lunch, everyone.